All right. Well, I want to welcome all of you to Look Who's in Town. I'm Kimberley Taws from the Country Bookshop in Southern Pines, North Carolina, from the SIBO region. I want to begin by just acknowledging, publisher support is so crucial to our continued success as booksellers. Mentorship, education, and camaraderie are some of the things that I truly value the most about my experience as a part of SIBA. And I'm sure those of y'all from NABA do as well. So I want to begin with true gratitude to thank tonight's sponsors for Look Who's in Town, because sponsoring these events is how New Voices, New Rooms can happen. So thank you. This evening's sponsors are HarperCollins, Blackstone, Source Books, Scholastic, Simon & Schuster, Penguin Random House, and Ingram. As I mentioned before, I'm Kimberley Taws from the Country Bookshop in Southern Pines, North Carolina. And I would like to thank all of y'all for showing up now and watching this later, because I know a lot of us participate from another time. I'd also like to thank the hardworking team behind New Voices, New Rooms. There's a lot going on that we don't see, and it's really a pleasure we're all in charge of our own events at the store, and we know what that is. So tonight, you see all of our phenomenal authors here. You're going to get to watch them all throughout the evening, but we're going to go one by one. I'll introduce each author. We'll have a quick chat, and then we'll all kind of bounce around together. I see Kelly Justice rocking the chat here, and I'd like to encourage y'all to participate in the chat, bump around, and try to make it reflective of the community that we really are. I'm going to begin with Tyler Merritt here, whose hair is phenomenal.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, Tyler, let me tell everybody who might not be familiar with you a little bit about you, and then we'll talk about your fantastic book. Tyler Merritt is an actor, musician, comedian, and activist behind the Tyler Merritt Project. Raised in Las Vegas, he has always had a passion for bringing laughter, grace, and love into any community that he is able to be a part of. For over 20 years now, he has spoken to audiences ranging from elementary school students to nursing home seniors. His television credits include ABC's Kevin Possibly Saves the World, Netflix Messiah, Netflix Outer Banks, Disney Marvel's Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Apple TV's upcoming series Swagger. Tyler's viral videos, Before You Call the Cops and Walking While Black, have been viewed by over 60 million people worldwide, with Before You Call the Cops being voted the #1 most powerful video of 2020 by Now This Politics. He is a cancer survivor who lives in Nashville, Tennessee. And we are here to talk about the recently released I Take My Coffee Black, reflections on Tupac, musical theater, faith, and being Black in America. Welcome.
Ooh, that was so good. Can I tell you who I just felt like, Kimberly? I'm obsessed with watching Jeopardy right now. And there's a guy on there named Matt Amato who's like won over $1 million. And every time they like talk to him, he just stands there with a weird look on his face as they brag about him. I felt like Matt Amato. So thank you for that moment, Kimberly.
Well, I'm happy, your book's all about empathy. So I'm happy you've got some empathy for Mr. Amato there. I really enjoyed your book, and I listened to the audio version, which has cameos from your editor, Jen, and your mom and your dad. But can you just tell us a little bit about your book?
Yo, I'll tell you, one of the biggest questions I get from people all the time is, are your mom and dad okay with you putting this book out? Because what I tried to do is I took a bet on proximity with this book. I put all of my money on saying, if I can allow someone into my life as a 6'2" Black man, and though we are not all monolithic, this is just my story. If I can allow you in as close as possible, then maybe, just maybe, that closeness will allow for you to spark empathy. The hope is by the end of the book, you can't help but to have empathy with me in that moment. And unlike a lot of brilliant books that are out by African-American authors, I do it a lot with humor. I do it a lot with, this is the part where everybody asks about my mom and dad. I really do believe that brokenness recognizes brokenness and pulls people together. And by the end of the book, I have revealed some of my most broken moments. And some would even say maybe even embarrassing, or I can't believe you put that in that book. But my hope is that by the end, you find yourself going, yo, I have been there too. I know what that feels like. And so if we walk through the broken together, when I begin to talk about my experiences just as a Black man walking down the street, it begins to feel different to you. And all in the midst of that, I do my best to try to make you laugh. And I love the fact you listen to the audiobook because I laugh a lot on it.
Well, I had to go visit family in Nashville and then see your autographed copy of Parnassus. But you know what, you do reveal a lot of your brokenness, which gives so much permission to acknowledge ours. That's true. But also, you know, you've talked so much about Christianity, and which is just a huge through line, but also your passion for musical theater. And there's so many places in this book that we can talk about, and we only have a couple minutes here, but one of the things I loved is how you use the story of your life as a tool to explain so much. And then what you would drop, like what I think of as history bombs in the most unexpected places. And I was wondering if quickly you could talk about Brian Jason Young and into the why doesn't Shaq play volleyball to California numbers? Because I think that reveals so much about, I mean, that one chapter is the whole book.
Sure. Really quick. I talk about my faith, but in a way that is the same way that I talk about everything else that's in my life. Is Jimmy Kimmel, that's a name drop, so if you need a broom to sweep that up. Jimmy Kimmel wrote the foreword, and there's some faith in there, but not so much that it scares people off. And in that very particular moment that you're talking about, man, I went to this performing arts high school in Las Vegas, and there were very few Black people. It was the first year that it happened. And my drama teacher wanted me to audition for the role of Leroy in Fame, right? And I couldn't because I was doing a show called Ain't Misbehaving. And she's sitting there, a white lady who I love, watching this young Black man come out and audition for this role as a dancer. And I'm sitting next to her as the assistant director. And this guy, Brian Jason Young, comes out and just is the most incredible dancer, like 15 years old, that I've ever seen. And my drama teacher is sitting next to me like, this guy's brilliant. And me, I'm sitting there as a young Black man like, how did this dude get here? Like the moon, sun, stars, and everything had to align for this kid kind of from the hood to end up on stage, like blowing all of our minds. Little did we know this guy would go on to, he's currently choreographing Ricky Martin's show in Las Vegas. He worked for Madonna, did Super Bowls, but in that moment as a high school kid, I just sat there in awe, and it started making me think, if we discovered more talents in young Black men at a young age, how much are we missing in the world? And you mentioned the why doesn't Shaq play volleyball? It was the idea of I talk about this in the book, Shaq is built that if he played volleyball, he would be dominant. But we live in America in a world where we don't take individuals and place them in different environments when it comes to Black men. And the book is all about, I'm even getting a little emotional thinking about it. The book is all about us as African-American men and women not being monolithic. And we are full of so much color in our Blackness. And the book screams that in, I think, one of the best way possible. I just cannot wait for people to read this book. That's how I feel about it.
Well,
and I wrote it.
Go.
Go ahead.
Well, I would even say it sings that. Well, so the next author that I would like to hand the floor to is Lily King. Many of you are familiar with Lily, but this book, I will, and for those of you who are not, I will give you her very official bio, like I will give everyone's. Lily King is the New York Times best-selling author of 5 novels: The Pleasing Hour, The English Teacher, The Father of the Rain, Euphoria, my personal favorite, and Writers and Lovers. Her story collection, 5 Tuesdays in Winter, will be published in this November. Her work has won numerous prizes and awards, including the Kirkus Prize, the New England Book Award for Fiction, twice, the Maine Fiction Award, twice, a Whitting Award, and the Barnes & Noble Discover Award. She has been a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award and an alternate for the PEN Hemingway. Lily lives in Portland, Maine, and we're here to talk about this collection that will be here on November 9th. So Lily, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and hi to all booksellers. I'm so honored to be here with such great writers and great booksellers who are invaluable to our lives.
Well, y'all give us such great stuff to talk about and read and share. I want to ask you, while you've been writing some of these short stories have been published before, but this is your first collection of short stories that has been published all together. And I was wondering if you could talk about your journey to this collection, what was published in the past, and maybe speak a little bit to literary journals, what role they played, and then also the writing of the other half of the stories that are brand new to this collection.
Sure. It's funny to me that this is my 6th book and I haven't put out a collection before this, because, for most writers, you start out writing short stories, and I certainly did in high school. I took 2 semesters of creative writing in high school, and I had to deliver a 3.5-page short story on my English teacher's desk, every Monday morning, for 2 semesters. And then I, went to college and wrote short stories, and went to graduate school and wrote short stories. None of those stories are in here. I'll just, I'll leave you. There's not all of my old young stuff in here. But I wanted to. I write short stories when I'm really stuck in a novel, and when I need to work things out and I don't even know what they are. And also when I need to have some fun. I feel like short stories are they're very low stakes in a way. You write a few pages, they don't work out. But a novel you can get very, very wrapped up in a sense of failure and dread and fear with a novel. And short stories, I don't experience that. And so they a lot of them came out of just that spirit of just really loving to write. And they also kind of come on like the wind, I feel like novel ideas can be very big, and they kind of, knock me out, and I don't think I can do it, kind of thing. And short stories are just these little moments, just a sentence that someone can say will trigger a whole story in my head eventually, sometimes years later. I think my first kind of moment where I felt like maybe I could actually be a writer is when I published my first short story in Glimmer Train in the early 90s, right after I finished grad school. And that was such a relief. And that story isn't in there, but the next one I published is that's South. And I published that in Plowshares. And then I published another one called 5 Tuesdays in Winter. And that is
about booksellers.
Exactly. It's a bookseller love story. I've been a bookseller many different places. And so I had to write the bookseller love story.
Well, I mean, there are a couple of stories in this collection that have just gone to my tippy top. The way you use the element, I'll give you, choose your own road here. The way you use the element of surprise in some of your stories, or in a couple of your stories at the end, it's the character looking back, like when in Dorgon, or God, the sister who moves in with the brother, and then she's looking back, and it's like, I'm sorry, I have the moment in time. So choose your own adventure for your last question. Do you want to talk about wrapping the stories up the way you do in A Couple in the End, or your element of surprise, shock at the end?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're kind of the same. They go to the same place in a way. When in the Door, John literally came to me because I ran into a kid that I had known when I was 15 years old in a pizza place. And, you know, we were older. I was with my husband and my two kids. And I hadn't seen him for 20 years or maybe even more. And I really didn't know him that well. And somehow we got on this weird conversation, and we were basically, I don't know, he was kind of talking about referring to kind of the neglect that he had as a kid, and how his parents one summer went away and they hired some college kids to take care of their house. And so he literally said, and since I came with the house, they had to take care of me too. And I remember that just really stuck with me. And that's all. I don't know anything about him. This story is not about him or his family. I don't even know them. But it triggered this whole, you know, concept of this boy, age 14, and these two college kids come to stay with him, and they end up really taking care of him in a way that his parents were completely incapable of taking care of him. And then there is that leap into the future at the end. And I think I was able to do that in the kind of later stories more because I had become a novelist and I had dealt with time in different ways. And I think I felt a little more sure on my feet in that kind of way. But I love those kind of leaps, and I particularly love those kind of leaps in short stories where you truly don't expect them. And I don't know, I felt like that was kind of just without giving it away, that was just kind of the right place to land with him, and kind of conveys a sense of who he is better than just staying at age 14. You know, if you just have a sense of where he went.
I loved you realized how important it was to him when he's looking back too. So next up is Delia Ephron, best-selling author, screenwriter, and playwright. Her movies include You've Got Mail, The Sisterhood of Traveling Pants, Hanging Up, based on her novel, and Michael. She has written novels for adults and teenagers, books of humor, including How to Eat Like a Child, and essays. Her journalism has appeared in the New York Times, 2 of which feature in this memoir, the Oprah Magazine, Vogue and MORE, and Huffington Post. She collaborated with her sister Nora Ephron on a play, Love, Loss, and What I Wore, which ran for 2 years off-Broadway and has been performed in cities across the US and around the world. We are here to chat about Left on 10th, a second chance at life, which, if you can't see here, it says love and hope, which are key. This memoir will be out on April 12th, 2022. And I just want to say welcome. And can you please tell us a little bit about your memoir?
Hi, it's lovely to be here. It's lovely to be here with these wonderful authors and with you and with all the booksellers that are doing such great work for us authors. Left on 10th is a memoir. It's about 5 years of my life, 2015 to 2020, when just about everything that could happen to me did happen to me. Left on 10th, I live on 10th Street in Greenwich Village. Left on 10th is my way home. I was left on 10th when my husband died. We'd been married 32 years. And after that, life took many left turns, some perilous, some wondrous. And this book is about all of them. And I must say, I really related to what Tyler was saying about the honesty, because my friends tell me it's shockingly honest. And I don't think you can write a memoir about, well, my husband died, I had a terribly difficult year, my internet crashed, which you would not think is on the same level, but turned out to change my life. I met a man that I had met 54 years before. I'd had 2 dates with him. He emailed me and we fell madly in love. And 5 months later, I got diagnosed with leukemia, and a fatal leukemia. And it was what killed my sister, Nora. So I had this experience so big. And, you know, I have to make everything funny as well as sad. So it's actually a lot of tears and a lot of laughter in this book. But I didn't ever think I could write it because the experience was so deep. And my connection with Peter, this new wonderful man who actually got me through, was so powerful. And I had so much trauma because I had this very experimental bone marrow transplant eventually, and came very close to death, but I didn't die. But I couldn't get over it. You know, I couldn't get past it. And then one day I thought, I'm going to write this. And I sent for my 6,000 pages of hospital records, and I started plowing through, and I went through all Peter in my emails when we started falling in love, and they're in this book too. And it just poured out of me. That's what it did. And it's about having a new life at the age of 71. That's what it is. And having the strength and being lucky enough to have it all work. So that's what it's about.
You know, it's interesting you referenced Tyler. There's a sentence in your book that I was like, oh, this fits perfectly together on the panel, because, you know, it's when you're walking, you're home for your recovery, and the quote is, if you see my vulnerability, I force myself to think, well, I hope you respect my bravery. And it was just so symbiotic. But, you know, I think what also just comes through so much through your memoir is how you were carried through by the love that surrounded you. And you referenced Peter, but I found myself really just being obsessed with all your friends. And I was wondering, and you don't get friends like that without being an incredible friend. So quickly, do you have one friendship tip?
No, I have to say, everyone who's read this book has said, oh my God, you're friends. And, you know, one of the things that happens when life is as traumatic as mine was, is that you find out kind of what you've been good at in life. And I had women warriors on my side. I had the most amazing friends, and they're all wonderful. And a lot of their email exchanges with me are in it. And so, you know, friendship. I mean, how do we get through life? I mean, I practically don't leave the house without calling a girlfriend to find out if she thinks it's a good idea. And I just realized, oh my God, and people have said to me, I want your friends. You know, it's just like, it was a glorious thing. But, you know, when you go on a journey through what I did, which was several years of being terribly sick, it's very important who you invite to go with you. And you have to know, your friends, which ones will be able to take that journey with you and which ones are the right ones to come along. And there's so many things you begin to learn about yourself, which I talked a lot about in this book. And that was one thing, you know, who could I take with me? And they were amazing.
You know, the other thing I have to bring up, you say a sentence, because Peter's love and just the love story is just a good love story. And you have one sentence that I have to bring up because you're like, and you don't even really talk about sex, just that, but you say, no one wants to hear about two 72-year-olds getting it on. In a movie, I know if you have two 72-year-olds simply kissing, you want the camera far away, like across the street or out the window. But our attraction was an essential part of the magic. And I have to bring it up because I think that the love story, it's exciting, and like it's love, and it's what you want to read about. I mean, I think that the friendship, the love, and like, I didn't even look up Peter because in my mind, he's like the coolest. I mean, I'm not 72 and don't want to date a 72-year-old, but like, I'm like, Peter is hot. He is like, so I did just want to mention that.
Well, falling in love at 72 is exactly the same as falling in love when you're 25 or 35. It is as head spinning and passionate as that can be. But because I'm 72, death is so close, you can reach out and touch it. And it is both, I mean, we talked about this when we first fell in love, because we'd both been through terrible losses with our spouses. And, you know, something about death made me even more interested in life rather than less. And I don't think that if you're in love, death is no match for love. Love will triumph. But being in love at that age has a kind of daringness to it, a kind of preciousness, because my God, I am being given a gift, and I will not waste this gift. I mean, it was so magical. It's still so magical. And Peter's a doctor. I mean, that was the other. I mean, there were so many crazy confluences and synchronicities in this book. But one of them is that he's a psychiatrist. So he's a psychoanalyst, a Jungian, and he'd been to medical school. So I'm in the hospital, and and I was very clueless during my illness. I mean, I think you're the same person you are sick as you are well. And I told the doctors not to tell me very much. I mishear, I invent, I have fantasies, but I knew that Peter would be tracking everything. And he was amazing.
Kimberly, why are
Yeah.
you trying to take Delia's man? Leave Peter alone.
Guys, he comes off the book.
He's really an adorable guy.
Leave her man alone, Kimberly.
I know.
I got your back.
Well, if you read the book, you'll see why.
The hardest part is me trying to not engage y'all more in conversation, because up next is Ellie Mistal, whose hair Tyler is totally envious of in this Brady Bunch block setup we have here. But let me tell y'all a little bit about Ellie Mistal. He is the nation's legal analyst and justice correspondent, an Alfred Nobler Fellow at the Type Media Center, and the legal editor of the More Perfect podcast on the Supreme Court for Radiolab. He is a graduate of Harvard College and Harvard Law School, a former associate at, can you help me out here?
Debevoise, not Debevoise, as they
And
say in the
Pimpton.
business.
Thank you. And a frequent guest on MSNBC and Sirius XM, and his Twitter is something many will recognize. The author of Allow Me to Retort is here. The Allow Me to Retort is from the New Press. He lives in New York, and this book comes out on January 11th, 2022. So if y'all can't see this is Allow Me to Retort, a Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution, which I don't know why I'm reading backwards when I have it written right here. So welcome.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Kimberly. Thank you for having me. Thank you to all the other panelists. Thank you to the booksellers. I just want to quickly say to you guys, look, do not put my book in the back with the other, Constitution for Dummies and how a bill became a law today, but it's not that kind of book, right? Put mine, if you got your new Tucker Carlson book, you got your new Josh Hawley, I'm running for president book, put my book next to it so I can be staring at that dude the entire time. Because that's what the book is about, right? The operative word in that title is retort, not constitution.
Well, you write all these columns, you do radio and television. What was burning? I mean, I know the answer, but you've got to tell everybody, what can't you communicate through TV and podcasts and everything else that compelled you to write this?
Well, when you do columns, I'm limited to 1,500, 1,000 words. When I do, television, it's 4 minutes. There's so much that you can't get into in those quick segments, right? The goal of when I talk about the law and I go on TV or I go on the radio, it's all reactive, right? It's all oh, what did Trump do today? And terrible. How can we stop it? We can. We lost 5 years ago. It's over. Oh man, well, next segment we'll talk about, like, and then just gone, right? You can't ever interrogate the premise of some of these questions. You can't ever explain how we got to this point where this man is allowed to do what he seems to be allowed to do. We can never interrogate how the entire third branch of government is working to, from my perspective, take away people's rights, step on people's rights, slow the progress of society. That never comes up in a 4-minute, 35-second segment, on MSNBC, much as I try. So the book was really a way for me to kind of interrogate some of the premises at the heart of our third branch of government. That's the other thing that I really wanted to do with this title. You figure, if you look at political coverage, I mean, people write books about president every day, right? Like they're sports books, right? They're like, oh, I was inside and then Bill Brantley shot the layup, but Al Gore said, no. Like that's how the presidents get covered. Congress gets covered in this very blow by blow, second by second, breathless kind of coverage. The third branch of government, which is just as powerful as the other two, by design, it's important, gets covered in this like very laid back, austere, straight-laced, well, if you think about the law, it comes from on high, from people who aren't really people, they're just heads and bats, and they think these thoughts. No, the law is as dirty and as gritty and as politically kind of it's politically motivated as any other kind of area of our politics. And what I try to do there is to bring out the politics, bring out the jousting and the fighting, what's actually happening at the Supreme Court when your rights are on the line. The black guy part, see, now that look, if you listen to any kind of legal coverage, what you're most likely hearing is a white guy, not just any white guy, like a straight up white cishet bro, top of the pile white guy. Those are the people who get allowed to talk about this branch of government. Well, I have a different perspective. I have the perspective, when I look at the law, I'm always reminded that the Constitution used to think that I was 3/5 of a person. I'm always aware that the Constitution as written was trash, was complete trash, that did not recognize me as a full human, to say nothing of my wife as a full human, and so on and so forth, right? So when I talk about it, I try to bring, when I say it's a black guy's guide, it's not a book for black people. It's not, allow me to retort, the Constitution so black people can understand it. That they don't need, black people don't need any special understanding, right? It's from the perspective of a black person. I try to talk about this document from the perspective of a person that this document was meant to ignore.
I put unintentionally, because I don't understand how to hit enter, your table of contents in the chat, because I think it gives, I might get yelled at later, but I just did it. But I think it gives a nice perspective for what the book is. And also what struck me is, I know the Constitution is a document that really, it's how it's interpreted. And I think this book is so good for anybody who loves history, any kid that's looking to go to law school, anybody, if you've handed somebody stamped and people are ready to, they've got the history and what is all this now, I think this might be a great next book for people. So before we go to where we all get to chat, I know I'm just not a great moderator I shouldn't be in the chat. So I would like to introduce our next author, who once again needs no introduction. If I can get to this, this book club masterpiece right here. Okay, so Karen Joy Fowler is the New York Times bestselling author of 6 novels, including the Jane Austen Book Club and We're All Completely Beside Ourselves, which was the winner of the PEN Faulkner Award and shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize. Her debut novel, Sarah Canary, won the Commonwealth Medal for Best First Novel by a Californian, was listed for the Irish Times International Fiction Prize, as well as the Bay Area Book Reviewers Prize, and was a New York Times notable book. Her novel, Sister Noon, was a finalist for the 2001 Faulkner Award for Fiction. Fowler's short story collection, Black Glass, won the World Fantasy Award in 1999, and her collection, What I Didn't See, won the World Fantasy Award in 2011. She is the co-founder of the Otherwise Award and the current president of the Clarion Foundation, also known as Clarion San Diego. She and her husband, who have 2 grown kids and 7 grandchildren, live in Santa Cruz, California. She also supports a chimp named Caesar, who lives at, can you help me pronounce this sanctuary, Karen? No? Well, here, unmute yourself and I will try it. It's Tacoma Chimpanzee Sanctuary in Sierra Leone.
Your guess is as good as mine. I can't pronounce it either.
Well, we're here tonight to speak about Booth, a novel that will be published on March 8th, 2022. I loved your author note at the beginning, which I want to talk about first, or we can just have you tell us about the book.
I'm happy to go in either direction. You pick.
I want to start with your author's note about the kind of tension you grappled with while writing this book, how to write this book without centering someone. And maybe you could talk to that. And as you're telling us about the books, I think it's fascinating, and it's what will ultimately make this a really interesting book club book.
Thank you. Let me just quickly say that to all of you that although I identify as myself as a writer, I identify myself even more strongly as a reader. And so I am so grateful to the people who are keeping bookstores alive, and the books I've heard about tonight just sound incredible. There was a lot of passion in the presentations. They just sound fantastic. I can't wait. So my book, I am well aware that when you see the name Booth, you're going to pick it up and you're going to think this is going to be a book about John Wilkes Booth. And I cannot deny that there he is. But when I was writing it, or when I was conceiving of it, I thought, wouldn't it be just lovely if we were as interested in the people who don't murder presidents as we are in the ones who do. And so the tension was that what I wanted to do was to write a book about John Wilkes Booth's family, and particularly his brothers and sisters. And John Wilkes Booth would be a character, but he would not be the central character. He would not take over the book, because being his brother or his sister was also an interesting life to lead, and particularly later on when he did what he did. So that's the tension, that it's a historical novel, and in some ways, as is often the case in historical novels, the plot was laid in for me, because we're headed for the assassination, and so there's a tension that I don't have to create. I don't have to lean on tricks of the trade to try to give the book a sense that we are moving towards something. But and one of the fascinating things about the family is the extent to which their lives intersected with the really iconic moments of the age, so that there's a connection to the California Gold Rush. There's a connection to the hanging of John Brown. They were in New York during the New York draft riots, and then of course the assassination as well. So it allowed me to think about an entire period, but with the to me, fascinating perspective of this very strange family who unfortunately are remembered because of the assassin in their midst.
This panel, it did not give me enough time. You give me these amazing books that seemingly have nothing to do with each other. And, in your author's note, which I think is very important, I do want to read this out loud because, I think that letting the two of y'all chat, you talk about, and this comes through, you let the reader really make these connections, but the more you read of Lincoln's warnings concerning the tyrant and the mob, the more I immersed myself in the years that led to the Civil War, the more brightly lit the road from there to here became. And, there are so many pieces among all of these books that connect together. And I'm going to ask a question to all of y'all right now, because all of y'all's books deal with to really take something that's at the core of Tyler's book is, proximity brings understanding. Every single one of these books deal with how our understanding of a context, how a context changes someone's understanding, Lily gives us so much background and so many surprises and what we think is something happening that's not happening. And, what would your sickness have been without love and friendship? And I was really wanting y'all to just throw it out. Did I talk about everybody's context? What kind of connection does your book bring? What I'm going to just throw it to Tyler first, because I started with you and I feel like you can carry anything.
Girl, I can carry it all. First of all, Kimberly, you are killing it. And everybody in the chat realizes you are killing it. But before I answer your question, I do want to say this. I plan on being the sexiest 75-year-old that all of you on A View make out. All of you here will want to watch me get it on. And I quote. Anyways, I think that something that connects, I would say, I think connects so many of us. I see your comment, Evan. Is that, at least for me, as I begin writing, I get so obsessed in thinking about the reader, right? And thinking about the experience that the reader is going to have with what they're walking through in my book. And as I was listening to Ellie, as I was listening to Delia, I was thinking about how, as we're living through these writing moments, as we're putting it on paper, as we're waiting for it to release, I think about Ellie's not coming out until January. There's this piece of us as writers that are wanting who we are and our soul of what we write to hook on to the reader. And what I loved about this panel is I feel that coming out of each author in such a magnificent way. I want to read all of these books at once. And that's what it made me realize about how they're all connected in their own way. I loved how you used my example of proximity. There's something about these books that are bringing us all together in a way. I think Delia and I might be the same person. Both have cancer and love people named Peter. I don't know. Karen is in Santa Cruz. And a lot of my book is about Scotts Valley. Nobody talks about Scotts Valley, Karen. All that to say, there's an excitement, especially within this group. You picked good authors that connect us, and I just think it's beautiful. I don't know if that answers your question, but I was over here getting all the feels, Kim.
Well, I have enjoyed each and every one of these books, and I cannot. So Tyler's book is already out. I think all of these galleys are coming. I think the next out is Lily's 5 Tuesdays in Winter. We might still be able to nominate for any next. You've got to read this book, period. Creature is the best, absolute best. I mean, I can't even tell you. The next one coming is Allow Me to Retort. This book is the one that we have to read, we have to push, and we have to put in people's hands. I think it's super special. I think he has a big audience, but we're booksellers and we know where to put great books. Next after that is let's see, April, March. March comes first is booth. This is book club goal. We all have to read it. We all have to place it. We all have to figure out, how we send all of these books out into the world. And then lastly, Delia in April with Spring Flowers, Cancer Beating, coming back up. So I really want to thank all of y'all for being here. All of you booksellers for letting me be your moderator, probably for the last time in a virtual space. I'm missing one. So
Get my booster on Saturday.
Yay! I think we're 2 minutes over. Linda Marie, I mean, I'll keep talking, but y'all keep talking.
You killed it, Kim. You killed it. I love watching you.
Thank you guys so much for having us. I really appreciate it.
It was wonderful. It was just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank
Wonderful. So much enthusiasm, Kimberly.
Yeah.
That was let us float through the event on your enthusiasm.
Y'all's books, that's what a bookseller does, is we get pumped about them and make everybody else pumped.
And if y'all have a beautiful Black man section in your store, you know where to put my book.
Your book right now is face up with a sticky note saying buy this, but also with a little Libro FM thing, because your audio book, I had to drive to Nashville for my stepmom suffering from cancer. People are still watching. Lily hasn't spoken in a while. You want to say something?
Thank you so much. You were fantastic. And this was so fun. And I too had all the feels. So I appreciate it a lot.
Not about me.
I'm surprised it took you so long to tell me that much of it takes place in Scotts Valley, because there's your hook. There's how you sell the book.
Exactly, guys. If you want to know more about Scotts Valley, California, I'm the book for you. You know what? If I come to Santa Cruz Bookshop for a signing, we got to hook up, Karen, because I feel like
fabulous.
We got kindred spirits outside of me and my girl Delia.
Tremendous. Yes.
I feel like I'm on the wrong side of it. We're talking about the assassin. I feel like my book is the only one, like the only Black guy's book. Like, yeah, Lincoln, he wasn't as great as y'all think.
But you talk about how the doctor fixed his leg.
Right? Yeah, that's me trying to explain. One of the things that we go through with when we talk about abortion rights, right, is that there's this idea that your medical attention has to do with somebody else's beliefs, right? That isn't how it worked for Booth. Booth broke his leg and the doctor set his leg. Doctor set his leg knowing full well what he had just tried to do, because that's what doctors do. Nobody said, is this good for the country if I set this? No, they set his leg because that's what doctors do. So I kind of tie that into a general Texas, Mississippi rant.
Well, the other thing that was questions that I wanted to ask was, like, so much of Lily's short stories was about class. And I don't know, Lily, if you did that purposefully, but I wanted to kind of have, since we're also here, ask you a little bit more about that. I have my colleague's book, not mine, but especially in Creature, but also just in my other, when in Dorgun, how do I pronounce it?
Dorgun.
And I was wondering if you could talk to that a little bit, how it shows through your stories.
Yeah, it isn't something I'm always setting out to do, but it's something that always happens. Just economic inequality is there. I mean, just like it's there in all of our lives every day. You cannot walk out of wherever you live and not experience those tensions. And a lot of times, I think in the stories that you mentioned, it's younger people just starting to be aware of that, just starting to be aware that they, either did or did not grow up with money or in certain circumstances, and how they're set apart in some way. And I'm just, interested in that tension among other tensions.
It's absolutely fascinating. So to Ellie, to get back to you and I can loop everybody back in, but the hope, I mean, other than your point that we should like throw out the Constitution and start over, your whole point is that this is a mutable document. And your whole point is that we should expand the Supreme Court, right? Do you just want to give some bullet points to that?
Again, the whole point of the book is an argument, right? Like, people have heard the regular argument. They hear it every day. And I'm giving people an alternative argument to like what the Constitution could be, what our country could be. And certainly when it comes to like our current political problems, there's no reason that the Supreme Court has to be 9 people. That is not set in stone, right? It's not baseball, all right? Like, 9 is not a magic number. The reason why it's 9, it's a lot of kind of complicated back and forth. It's a lot of political maneuverings. You could maneuver it to be 11. You could maneuver it to be 19. The California Circuit Court of Appeals, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has 29 judges, and it works just fine. And so I make an argument, not just in terms of expanding the Supreme Court for kind of political reasons, which anybody can do, but expanding it for diversity reasons, and not just kind of racial and ethnic diversity of thought. Most people don't know that until Amy Coney Barrett got on the court, we've had, all 9 justices came from 2 law schools, Harvard and Yale. That's not right. Like that doesn't have to be like that. Almost all of the judges have prosecutorial backgrounds. That's not great. Like, so you could expand the court to really have professional diversity, and it would, and here's the kicker, it would depoliticize the court. Because I promise you, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, it makes no sense other than for both parties to go to the mattresses to fight over her replacement. That's the only politically intelligent thing to do. But if you had 29 justices, if you had 39 justices, well, now one of them dies, that's just Tuesday, right? You just, all right, well, next man up, next woman up, let's go. Like, and it takes the political kind of make or break fight kind of down off the precipice so far. So that's that point. I didn't want to let Lily get away though with that theory though of when you realize you're poor, because that is like such, I think that is such an underreported part of people's lives. Like, for me, my parents didn't send me in a private school, so I thought I was rich until I went to private school, and like week 2, somebody's inviting me to his dad's boat, and I'm like, your dad got a like a rope? No, like a yacht. I'm like, oh, maybe maybe my Atari 2600 is not the pinnacle of economic success. So I think that's a great hook to do.
Through that, I thought syrup sandwiches was just what everybody ate because it was delicious. I didn't realize a hot dog bun was a thing for an actual hot dog until I was like in college.
Well, the other thing that, like, the classism, and then the other thing to talk about is the altruism, which I think comes through most specifically when Delia talks about her 27-year-old donor, and there's a quote, and you reach out to her, and I want you to talk about this, but she's like, oh, I just thought that's what everyone should do because you can.
It was really amazing to contact Casey. After 2 years, you can contact your donor. And she lived in a town called Niceville. I simply couldn't believe it. I mean, for a writer, that's too divine for words. She's from Florida, and she was so lovely. At 25, she registered with a bone marrow to give her bone marrow. There are these banks all over the world. They all cooperate. If you need a bone marrow transplant, you might get one from Austria. You might get one from Japan. It's an international medical community. It's perfectly remarkable. She registered with one, I think, that started in Germany, and 15 months later, she got an email that she want to give her bone marrow to me. I mean, she didn't know who I was, and believe me, it's not that easy. I mean, you have to take some drugs, and you have to show up and have your blood checked all the, I mean, it's a real gift. It's a real act of kindness to do this. And it was just incredible to talk to her. And she was so relaxed about it. Oh yeah, I want to do it again, she said, and why not?
Delia, can I just say, I just want to tell you, I am so glad you're here. as a cancer survivor as well, and I feel like you had like it's super intense. My cancer was like cancer light, but like hearing your story, I'm just so glad you are here now and in this room. And not only is it an honor to have you a part of this panel, but it's an honor to hear your story. And you have been like chicken soup for my soul, man. So thank you. Have made me feel better about Ellie's hair being cooler than mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's lovely. I can't quite believe it. I mean, I think, I can make almost anything funny, and my book is funny, but there is so many tears in it as well. And I can't believe it. It's been, it was 2 years post-transplant. And it's the only thing that can save you from AML leukemia is a bone marrow transplant. And I went into the doctor's office and he said, you're no more likely to get it now than I am, and I've never had it. And I just thought, and they gave me odds because that doctor did not know I didn't like to know about odds. And he said, you have a 20% chance when we went into this. And I said, Peter was there with me. I said, but I just fell in love. And I thought, he's going to think, who is, this 2 70-year-olds sitting in these little chairs. And I just say, we just fell in love, and of course I was trying to explain why I would do something as crazy as go through that torture to survive for a 20% chance, but oh my God.
So Peter was in the room and your reaction was, you said to the doctor, but I just fell in love.
Yeah, but we just fell in love, I said. But
this is just insane. That's just insane. This is too much.
It's a very lovely story.
It is. And you know what? Y'all are sitting in there and you weren't together for this one. And you kind of referenced this, during your like speed chat that we had at the beginning. But the doctor, and I was trying to find the quote in here, but of course I can't. The doctor's like, oh, if it doesn't come back in 2 months, you'll never get it again. And you're missing your,
yes.
And
I remember this, right?
Your interpretation, because I think it's so central to your story, but also so much else that we're talking about how we interpret a fact.
Yeah, doctors really, I mean, if you're anxious in that room, you can mishear anything. And the doctor said to me, if I lasted 2 years, I wouldn't get it again. He said, very unlikely. And I thought he said that in 2 years, I would get it again. I absolutely heard the opposite. And I carried this terrible fear. I was watching the months go by, thinking, oh, when it hits February, that's going to be it for me. That's going to be the beginning. And I finally said to Peter, I don't know why it took me so long. Like, I can't believe, Vivi said that to me. That's what we call the doctor. His name's Van Bazine. We call him Vivi. And he said, he didn't say that. He said the opposite. He said, if you last 2 years, you're not going to get it. And I just flipped it. And I oh God, a patient can be a very anxious person. And really, I was,
It's so important, I think, to have somebody else in the room. But I was right there with you on that.
Yes, thank God. Thank God. Yeah.
But also, what a moment to live through the realization that your life is still ahead of you.
Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah. It's amazing. It was, everything about it was it almost, it felt miraculous. It was so much luck involved in my story in so many ways that I thought, is luck another word for miracle? Because I didn't believe where I was.
I finished writing I wrote my book and then was diagnosed with cancer, like in like a 2-week period, turned it into my publisher, was diagnosed with cancer just this last December. And everybody's been asking me if I'm going to write about my cancer experience, because I'm like you, where I put so much humor into everything. And I think I've just decided on this call that I'm going to.
Yay!
Because I think it's beautiful. But mine, from being like an overweight Black man, is not as romantic as yours. But it'll be fine.
It'll be yours. I'll
Who
tell you though,
knows?
if anyone who gets as traumatized as cancer can make you, if you can write it, draw it, knit it, dance it, paint it, if you can do something with that experience, you can take it outside yourself and move it away.
That's beautiful. And Karen, I thought your book was about a kissing booth, so I'm so glad that, you know, I was really excited about this whole kissing booth book, but you know, whatever.
Well, you know, my next book, well, I'll just use the same title. It'll just be Booth again, but this one will be the kissing booth. And I think that's inspired.
I believe that all of our panelists' books are in the gallery room. Go ahead, Karen. Sorry.
I was just wondering how old the people in the kissing booth are going to be, because I too am 71, but
Yo, I am about this Love Above 70 book, and I'm gonna let y'all know right now. I still got a few years, but if y'all ain't gonna write it, I'm gonna write it, and it's gonna be two beautiful Black people, and you know, there you go. And I'm gonna call it like Old Chocolate or something.
I was about to be the millennial here and be like, kissing booth, is that like on the gram now or something? Is that what we're talking about? Is there an app for that somewhere?
Well, all of our panelists' books are in the gallery room, which if they make it really clear on New Voices, New Room stuff about how to get there. So what's really special about us chatting, and I really appreciate y'all sitting here and just shooting the crap with us for 15 minutes, is that part of the joy of these conferences is what we learn at the bar or all the downtime in between these official events. And I noticed in the chat that we got to do that a little bit here, which I think makes it super special, especially because usually I'm the one closing down the bar. So I feel like I was the right panel to have this. So hopefully we'll all get together in real life soon. But until then, we have the books, and I cannot thank each of y'all enough for being here and being on this panel, and for all of y'all attending. Let's read these books. Let's sell these books. And again, thank you to our sponsors. And I'm going to sign off.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Meet
Bye,
you.
guys.